Hi, my name is Kevin McDonald, and I'm declaring my independence. Independence from what? Why, negative thoughts and energy, of course. Chief among them, hate, division, and fear. You see, I know that we're all one, and together we can solve any problem, save our planet and each other. Please, join me as we come together as one and choose a better way to be. So now, let's begin with my independence report. And welcome, everybody, to another episode of My Independence Report. My name is Kevin, that's Kayla, and that's Rhea, who is there as well. That is Kayla's 3-year-old attachment. And we're trying to have that surgically removed, but I'm afraid that she's not going anywhere, this little one, which is fine, and because it is what it is. And speaking of is what it is, we had booked a guest for this hour, and we crossed our signals and stuff, and so we're going to book her for another time. But the subject that we were going to talk about was suicide and suicide prevention, and I was talking to Kayla about it earlier, and I said, you know, I've had quite a few instances with dealing with suicide, and you piped up with.
I piped up with going to high school and having 2 people commit suicide that I went to high school with, along with car accidents and cliff accidents. So there's just suicide is a big thing that needs to be known and put out there, that it's a serious deal.
Well, let me explain to our audience just how serious a deal it is. And I'm pulling up statistics from 2019 that 47,511. Let me repeat that number. 47,511 people and 1.38 million people attempted it. 47,511 died from it. It is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. There's almost 14 people per 100,000 individuals commit suicide. The middle-aged, I'm in trouble. Middle-aged white men account for almost 69.38% of suicide deaths in 2019. On average, there are 130 suicides committed every day, and that is a statistic that I would like to see changed. And but first, let's talk with you a little bit about your experience with it. Has somebody very close to you chosen to do that?
I would say more acquaintances through high school, but I know the impact that it put on the high schoolers and the people that were, very social with this person, or people, I should say. I was in classes with both of them as this had happened. I'm not going to name names because that's just, we're not necessary.
Rules. What we're going to not talk about is we're not going to talk about the manner in which they chose to do it, and we're not going to talk about their names. Although I am going to talk a little bit about a particular situation that I had, because I think it's very instructive for people who are going through this. But anyway, but it affected when somebody did that, it affected your high school to a great degree, didn't it?
Yes, it did, and to an extreme degree. I don't know. A lot of people remember the Wassel test, and the person's name that had done this, his name was in our Wassel test, and the effect of that made the friends not come to school, not take the test. His girlfriend at the time wouldn't show up for weeks at a time. She showed up for a day. Everybody would crowd her, type stuff. It was a very overwhelming, tragic experience for a lot of us high schoolers. It's an eye opener as well.
It was. And a lot of the folks that you went to high school with, did they get counseling? Did somebody help them? Did somebody talk to them about and talk them through it? Or was it one of those things that they kind of hush, we don't want to talk about this, and the family doesn't want it known that they committed suicide? Which was it for you?
I would say there was about a good 50% that I would assume that reached out for counseling. And then there was that other 50% that just decided it wasn't for them and dealt with their own coping mechanisms. We had counselors in high school that would come in and do speeches and offer their time during school hours for the children in need that needed it right then and there.
I want to tell you a story. This is the first one of several that I have. I got a call from at this time, she was my girlfriend's brother's wife, who was, her name was Sandy. And she called to say that her brother had walked into his house, walked into his bedroom, and found his wife in bed with another man. He left and was very distraught. And he left and said, this is 4th of July. And he said, I'm going to go out with a bang. And they thought that they had gotten all the guns away, but apparently he had more guns than they knew about. And so they asked me to go to help find him. And so I drove, me and my future brother-in-law went and drove to a secluded area. It was just a 1-lane road on 1 lane each way. And it was a very a dense forest and bushes area. And there were a bunch of cars there. Now, this is before cell phones, keep in mind. This goes way back to the 1980. And so there were a bunch of cars on the side of the road, and people were out and they were actively looking because that's where they found his car. And so we went up down a bit of a logging road and was looking for him and calling out his name and stuff, and he wasn't there. And so we came back to where the cars were, and I said, well, let's go walk down this way a little bit. And there was a road, and then there was a ditch, and then there was a steep incline going up the hill, and it was all foliage. And so we started walking down that road, and I saw some movement in the grass and in the foliage that was right there, and foliage was broken and stuff. And I said, well, let's start walking up here. And at this point it was getting dark. And so I said, well, why don't we walk up this way? His brother was at the top of the hill. The gentleman who we were looking for, his brother and a couple of people were at the top of the hill. And so I said, why don't we walk up from here and we'll just go up to the top of the hill. So we started walking up in that direction, and we got probably 30, 40 feet. And at this point it was dark, and right in front of us was a flash and a loud bang. So we stopped, and we didn't quite know what to make of it. And we continued after a few moments, and we came upon an area that had been cleared out, and there was a body lying there. And so we went to him and turned him over, and he had he had a rifle with him. We thought he only had a handgun, but he had a rifle. And I looked, and his head was gone. And so I yelled for somebody to go get some medical attention, and somebody had to get in a car to go to a payphone to call an ambulance and support help. And his brother was at the top of the hill trying to get down the hill, and we were trying to keep him away because I knew that one wasn't going to end well. And so that was my first encounter with somebody who took their own life. So we stayed with him until the firemen came, and then the police came, and they took my brother-in-law and me and put us back in the police car because they wanted to get an answer of what had happened and so forth. So we did that, and then we spent some time there, and then we went to his family's house where they were all gathered together. And it was a horrific scene for everybody there because everybody was just shocked, and it was a horrible, horrible thing for the entire family. I remember being called over to the grandfather, who was very old at the time and very frail, and he shook my hand and he said, thank you for going to help him and stuff like that. And but it was because we walked up on him that he chose that time. He had been sitting there smoking dope for the last several hours, watching people hunt for him and look for him, and he was just watching them. And then when he was in risk of being discovered, that's when he made the decision to either give up or to take his own life. And at that moment, he took his own life. That was 4th of July in like 1980, 81, and I have not enjoyed the 4th of July ever since, for that very reason, because it affected his whole family in a huge degree, and it affected me, and I didn't even know the guy, but I did know him post mortem, if you will. So it was, that kind of thing. I don't think when people commit suicide, they think about that sort of thing, how it's going to affect other people. What do you think?
How did it make you feel, though? That's my question.
I felt like, well, first of all, I felt like there was nothing that I could do. I couldn't have saved him because we couldn't see. And he made a decision to do that when he didn't have to. Nobody was he was putting a gun to his head, but nobody else was. And he didn't have to, but it made me, it changed my life in a couple of ways. First of all, I will not own a gun. I will not have a gun in my house. When my kids were growing up and they wanted to, because the other kids in the neighborhood had a gun. Nope, we don't have guns in the house because 50% of suicides happen by gun, and we're not going to have that. And it also made it so that I never did enjoy loud noises again, or the 4th of July or any of that, because I literally saw things that a human should not see. And so it was very hard. It was very hard. And I didn't enjoy that aspect of it at all. But while we're going through this, as we talk about the stories that we have, we need to do, I know what I need to do. Hold on just a second.
Suicide. I was going to tell you, we got to put the suicide hotline thing up on the bottom. There we go.
The suicide prevention hotline, you'll see scrolling across the bottom of your screen. If you have got an issue, if you feel like you are not in control of yourself, what I'm learning, it's amazing, Kayla, what you learn when you start reading about these things that you don't really want to discuss, because nobody wants to, suicide is a huge epidemic in our country. A lot of people are so unhappy with their lives, or they have mental capacity issues, or they're bipolar, or that they tend to, and we tend to ignore them when we don't. And I've got another story in a little bit that addresses that completely, involving this brother-in-law that witnessed a suicide with me. He ended up doing virtually the same thing years later. But let's talk about. I know you've got it up on your phone, or do you still have it up on your phone?
Which one?
The suicide prevention. Prevention is possible.
Yes, it is.
So, although the underlying causes to suicidal thoughts and attempts of a person can seem overwhelming, there are several ways that you can help with prevention efforts. First, know the warning signs. Would you like to go through some of the more common warning signs?
Would I like to? Let me see. Social connections. Knowing the warning signs. I might not have the right one that you have exactly up right now, but knowing the warning signs, suicide is more than just one cause. Factors such as substance misuse, untreated mental illnesses can lead to higher risk for suicide in individuals. So we might not be lethal means in suicide. Let me relook my thing. Suicide prevention.
Okay. And while you're looking at that, I'll kind of review a few of these, because there's also the feelings that people exhibit when they feel suicidal as well. Some of the most common themes about a suicide attempt are, well, number one, which makes total sense, a previous suicide attempt. somebody that talks of suicide or making a plan or something along those lines, a strong wish to die or a preoccupation with death. Giving away prized possessions, that's a big one. If you've got something that, if you have somebody that is in your life and they want to give you something that you know is near and dear to their heart and they want you to have it, it's almost like they're creating a will for that. Giving away prized possessions. Signs of depression, such as moodiness, hopelessness, and withdrawal. You know, you were a teenager sooner than I was, or because you were a teenager like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I remember being a teenager and how there were times because you didn't know what your future was going to be. You didn't know what anything was going to be like. You didn't know if you were going to get married or if you were going to have a good time or if it was going to be a disaster. Did you ever feel like, and I know that I did. I never got close to acting on it. Did you ever feel like when you were a teenager, because this is a very awkward time for kids.
Very. I can honestly say, I'll be real. Let's be real. Okay. I'll be real. Let's be the real Kayla today. I was a child growing up, struggling with a lot of things as a child, and for attention, for not having a father, my mother sometimes not really being around, my sister taking care of me when she came back home. Middle school, attention seeking, I did try and commit suicide in a bathtub more than once. And it's the feeling of being wanted. It's seeking attention when needing the attention. It's a cry for help when someone needs help. It's a very serious thing. I fear with it with my 10-year-old son every day. You know, if I could have done something like that, what's to say my son's not going to get upset about a video game or something that somebody had said to him at school, because bullying's a real big factor now. And it still has been. It's always been. So there's that insecurity feeling that you have deep down and just wanting somebody to love you for who you are. And if anybody here today, I could cry. I'm gonna cry. Anybody that is listening to this today, it's okay to have those feelings. You're not alone. There are thousands upon thousands of people struggling with these. You could sit here and say that you're the most normal person and you're the happiest, healthy, and nothing's mentally wrong with you. You have the best life in the whole world. I call bullshit. Because everybody has had some kind of upbringing that has triggered some kind of PTSD that has manifested something in their mind to make themselves feel not worthy. And I'm here to tell you today, you're worthy. You're okay to have these thoughts and these feelings because you're going to overcome them. And it's sad to me when the people actually act upon them and really do take their lives.
And a lot of times it is a snap decision.
Very.
It's not, and you can be planning it. There's some people that plan it for a long time, but a lot of times, as in the story that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, it's a snap decision because you just get so pissed off at the world that you decide that you're going to be angry and you're going to take it out on the only person that you have available to, and that's yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be part of this world anymore. You don't want to live in it anymore. You don't want to be around it, and it clouds your judgment to the point where you can't think straight about what it's actually going to do to the people who love you, that are around you.
Yep, that it does. It's heartbreaking, you know, thinking back at my acts upon life or even making a statement because of my depression, my anxiety, my PTSD, you know. I'm out here, and if I'm out here, put yourself out there to become a bigger and better person. Because if you make this situation something that's going to be aware of, We can save more people if we're aware that these feelings and these negative emotions and these thoughts of depression and suicide, they are real feelings. And if we can express them freely, God damn it, why can't we save more people?
Because I think oftentimes we don't talk about it. We have, with our kids, we have the sex talk. With our kids, some of them,
Yeah.
at the age appropriate time, and we talk about friends, and we talk about alcohol, and we talk about drugs, but I don't know if how many of us say to our kids, "How you doing today? How you feeling? What's going on in your world? I care. I want to know." And when it comes back that they've been bullied, or that they're not happy, or that they missed the baseball cut, and they can't play, or their girlfriend left them, or their boyfriend left them, the first thing that you think about is, how can I help you through this pain that you're feeling? But we don't necessarily always do that. A lot of times we don't. There are many feelings that a person considering suicide might be feeling, including can't stop the pain, can't think clearly, can't make decisions, can't see, this is a big one, can't see any way out, can't eat, sleep, or work, can't make the sadness go away, can't see a future without pain, can't see themselves as worthy or worthwhile, can't get someone's attention, can't get control. I think can't get someone's attention, especially as a kid, as a teenager, if you can't get the attention of the adults that are in your life because they're so busy and they're going and doing this and that, I implore you as a parent, please stop and say, how are you doing? How are things? Take an actual interest. Sit down and have dinner together. At least once, 2-3 times a week, all sit down at the same table and talk about what's going on in their lives, because there's a lot going on in a teenager's life that you will never know about. Some you don't want to know about but there's a lot that you just don't want to know about, or you don't know about, and you don't know how it was years later. My kids are now grown men and adults, but it wasn't until their adulthood that they told me some of the things that happened to them or how they felt when they were teenagers that they didn't share. And fortunately, neither of them was in that place of wanting to commit suicide, but that could well have been. They had friends. Everybody's been touched by this hideous disease. Mm-hmm. And I'll call it a disease because I think that's what it is. And I don't think we talk about it enough. I know that when you were in that phase and you were, well, first of all, I know my parents never even considered bringing it up.
It was never talked about.
No,
it's still not talked about.
Not in many families.
No,
because I'm not sure I know why. Do you have an idea why?
Fear, maybe fear of it happening if you talk about it. Fear of giving them the idea. But you got to realize that this fear, that idea, that already is there. So it's fear. It's fear in the adults not wanting to bring it up to their children, just like they fear not talking about sex or drugs and alcohol. It's fear. You don't want your child, I'm going to talk about sex, or I'm going to talk about suicide, or I'm going to talk about drugs and alcohol, and then turn in fear that you're 10, 9, 8, however old, he or she is going to in turn go out and do it. It's fear. It's stop, look, and listen. That is what I was told by my grandmother, my grandparents, my mother, by everybody in my life. Stop, look, and listen. So if we're being told that as a child, hear it as an adult. Stop, look, and listen to the people around you because they need you.
I value that statement to a great degree because it's so true. you really need to stop and listen. Let me tell you another story. I got another one. In 2002, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, her name is Sandy, and she was 40. She had a congenital heart defect, and they really, at that time when she was born, they didn't think she'd make it out of her 20s. Well, because of modern technology, she made it to about 40, but she needed to have a heart transplant, and her health declined, and she wasn't able to. She was in ICU for like 3 months at the University of Washington Hospital, and she died like 15 times, and they kept bringing her back, but she wasn't healthy enough to get a new heart, and so one day they couldn't bring her back anymore. That day she died like 7 or 8 times, and then finally and so my brother-in-law, they'd been married for 20 years, and my brother-in-law was lost. Well, and then what made it worse was, as we found out later, and all of these things we found out later, because in this particular family, they did not talk about anything consequential. They didn't get into anything deep. They didn't talk about if they had an argument when they were growing up. If they had an argument, they'd all go to bed angry, and then the next day nobody would talk about it. They wouldn't work through it. They wouldn't figure it out. They wouldn't. So consequently, they didn't. When she died, he was in the middle of, and can't congratulate him for this, but he was in the middle of an affair with somebody that was 15 years younger than him, or 20 years younger than him. And he thought that when she died, he was going to be released from the obligation of taking care of a very sick woman. And then he had a young girl. But when Sandy died, so the young girl left. And so Bruce was by himself, and his parents were not necessarily there for him. His sister, my wife, was not there for him. I implored her on several of occasions to give him a call, and she just never did. And she didn't feel the need, and because I guess she didn't know what to say to him. So one Saturday morning, about 5 months after she passed, he called his father because he'd gotten in trouble at work. He had taken a loan out, and this girl had taken about $5,000 from him. And he had just got the bill from the University of Washington for $500,000. And so all of these things hit him all at the same time. And so he ended up being very angry. He gathered up his the titles to his cars and stuff like that, and put them on the dining room table. And then when we found them, they had blood on them because he took his own life at that moment. And her brother called me. I was home that day, and he called me and said, "Bruce has committed suicide." And I said, you got to be kidding me. So I called my wife, who was out bike riding, and told her I needed to come get her and to meet me somewhere. And so we met, and that's when I told her that he had committed suicide. And her response was not tears, as I would have expected, or sadness. It was anger. She was mad at him for taking his own life, which I suppose is a fairly normal deal. So anyway, we go down and meet the people that had called me down at Bruce's house. Now Bruce was already gone. They had called the sheriff, and they'd taken him away and stuff, which, well, that's a topic for another time. But anyway, so we went there and made sure the house was secure and stuff. And then we drove down to her parents' house in Lacey. And it was the oddest thing in my life. I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. We go down there. We didn't tell them ahead of time that Bruce had committed suicide because we wanted to tell them in person. So we go down to their house, and we knock on the door, and they open the door, and they say, "What are you guys doing here?" And I said, "Well, we've got some news, and can we go sit down?" And we turned around and walked into the house, and Les, who is the father-in-law, my father-in-law, was tapping on his wife saying, I told you, see, I told you. And I assumed that what they were talking about was that we were going to get a divorce, and that's why we were down there to talk to him. And he was saying, I told you that they're going to get a divorce. Well, we sat down and we said, we have some horrible news for you. Bruce committed suicide today. And he said, I know. And I was, what? Well, as it turns out, he had a phone conversation about 15 to 20 minutes before Bruce passed away. And instead of getting in his car, which I would have done, if I had an inkling that one of my kids was in trouble, I would have gotten in my car and I would have gone up there and sat with him and figured it out. He didn't. Bruce had been alone. He'd been lonesome. He didn't have very many friends. The girl that he was dating had left him. His job was in trouble. He just got a bill for $500,000 and his father was not being very supportive. So he got angry, had a gun, and used it. He'd seen what had happened to Danny's family 15 years before, but that didn't seem to stop him and stuff. And so my point behind telling you that story and telling the audience that story is, if you think in any way, shape, or form in your wildest dreams you think that somebody could be suicidal, do not, dare not act. You have got to go and take care of them and make sure that they're okay, and up to and including hospitalization, whatever you need to do, but do not let somebody be alone in that time. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense, because you never know what somebody's rock bottom looks like. It could be a video game. It could be bullying. It could be breaking up with someone, having a loss of relationship, money, cats, dogs, family member. It could be anything that could set somebody's rock bottom off. Anything.
And it is so true. It is so true. Now, to lighten the mood just a little bit, now Bruce has been gone for that's 20 years. That's today the 19 years. And so I know he went through some tough times over on the other side, and you're a bit of a psychic, and you have some mediumship skills. So do you have anything that he would like to say to add to this discussion?
He's sorry. Sorry. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
And I think most of them are. They're sorry. It's a blink of a minute. It's a flash of a gun. It happens that quick that, half the time they're stuck over here. They're stuck still in that traumatic state of what they were going through the minutes before it happened. And that's what's more heartbreaking.
Right.
Is knowing that they're physically stuck.
And it's important for us to recognize when somebody has a problem and to support them as best that you can, and ask the question in this paperwork that I found. The questions that you should ask are pretty profound in that they want you to everybody wants to be valued. And had somebody said to him, are you thinking about suicide or killing yourself? And he said yes. Then, to assess seriousness of the situation, ask about one hurting themselves. And people do that all the time. But you've got to be there for them. Excuse the expression, or excuse that. So it's really is important, and it needs to come out of the closet, I feel.
I agree. This comes across, I'm looking it up right now. This affects people across race, age, gender, Status quote, frankly, suicide doesn't care. It takes anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. It's going to affect you in that mind state. When it's there, it's there. So be aware, if your friends are talking negatively, having emotions or being down on themselves, heaven forbid, if one of your friends lost a job and that was their pride and joy, reach out to them, look up to them. If you have a friend that lost a family member, a child at a young age, be with them forever, because I've been there and I have been with one of my friends forever in one of those situations. So be with those people, fight for them, because in reality, they're fighting to keep themselves going. And they need that extra fight, one person can make a difference. They need that one person that's willing to make a difference, to look deep into their soul and tell them, you are worthy. You are something of this world that you don't even know yet. You just need to live past it and push on.
How do you get people to do that when they feel hopeless?
Stick with them and give them the hope that they need. Give them the love that they may need. It's not an easy journey. Not at all. It's not an easy thought process to be thinking either. It's traumatizing. It's depression. It's anxiety. It's negativity manifesting. You got to overcome it. You got to let love and light prevail.
One of the bigger things is that I've discovered in the last 10 years or so is that there is it used to be called manic depressive. Now it's called bipolar. And there are lots and lots of people that are walking around with bipolar. And let me tell you a few of the symptoms and signs. If you have somebody that is wildly optimistic and happy and is promiscuous and is leading a wonderful life one minute and the next minute they want to kill somebody, that may be bipolar. If you
can't see my hand, but my hand's up there, so I'm in that range. I think everybody's got a form of bipolarness. It's just a matter of how they take it out. I'm not all that. I'll just laugh at myself because I know how woohoo I am. So,
Well, but being bipolar is a curse, and it's my brother was, he's passed now, but my brother was in a relationship for they got married twice, was in a relationship for 10 or 12 years. And the cycle was like this. She and he got together. They were happy. She was a wonderful lady. And then one day she threw him out. She got mad at him for something that he considered insignificant, but she threw him out. So he went home. And then he was home for 3 days. And then she would come over and wearing nothing but a coat and spaghetti. And so she would bring in the deal of spaghetti, drop the coat, and then they would get back together.
The whole new spaghetti level begins.
Exactly.
It is. It's mixed emotions, feelings. In suicide, it can be based off of depression, bipolar, anxiety. There's all these mental illnesses that are associated with it. But let alone, sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's that hunky-dory person, like Robin Williams, for instance, that always got to make you laugh, always got to put a smile on your face. And deep down, he was struggling. He was in pain, but he took his pain and projected it to make other people smile, to make himself better. So that's another way. If you're hanging out with somebody hunky-dory, happy-go-lucky, always wanting to make everybody else feel good, stop, look, listen, and ask them how they are really feeling.
Deep down inside.
Deep down. Ask them, how are you really feeling? And half the time, they might give you an answer, and half the time they might sit there dumbfounded and try and think of it because they really need to figure it out themselves.
And we all are going through all of that. And if you feel like you need counseling, there are avenues that you can go. And the fact of the matter is, at one point or another, we can all use counseling.
Yes.
because it was very handy to have somebody else look at our situation and be able to say, so you're doing this, why? And
Mhm.
you're doing that and stuff, and we all have got stuff. I as I've gotten older, I've met so many people now, and I've met so many families. I don't believe that I've ever met a family that does not have some dysfunctionality associated with it.
Amen to that. We're all
And
dysfunctional. Nobody's perfect. If we
nobody's
were
perfect. Yeah.
perfect in this world, we'd be shitting rainbows and glitter and gold chunks of whatever.
We'd be having, yeah. But every family that I've met, be it from my in-laws that they never talked about anything negative, to
Mhm.
my family, which they never talked about anything at all. And when I was a kid, and the two biggest lines I ever heard from my father were, okay, well, the three biggest lines. One was "good game." The second one was when I play baseball. The second one was "don't talk back, young man," and the third one was "go to your room."
Mhm.
That's pretty much the relationship when I was growing up with my old man. Was like, hey, Dad, don't talk back, go to your room. Sometimes it was like a one sentence thing. Don't talk back to me, young man, and go to your room. But and so my dad never would have. He wasn't in him. He didn't know how. But today, I like to think that people are a little bit more understanding and can make that connection to somebody else. My dad never in a million years would have sat me down and said, "Son, I love you. How are you feeling?" He didn't know how to do that.
Nope.
But I implore, especially the fathers in the world, in this day and age, you need to take an active part in your kids growing up. You need to be aware of what's going on in their world. Are they being bullied? How's their schoolwork doing? Are they feeling fulfilled? Are they having fun? Are you having fun with them? Doing all of those things, and if that's not happening, figuring out how to make it happen, because it's more important than ever, because suicide is an easier thing now than ever. There are 390 million guns in this country, and a lot of people have got them, and if you don't have them locked up properly, shame on you. But if your kid can get a hold of it and can get ammunition, it's
That's the problem.
yeah, or if you are being a middle-aged white guy and your world is falling apart because you haven't gotten where you want to get to in life, and you look at your wife and going, "This is the best I can hope for," and your kids are struggling, and you're struggling at work, and you all you're looking forward to is working for another 10 years and then retiring and sit on the lawn and just wasting away. If that's you need to have a passion, and that's you need to grow some balls and get a passion for yourself. What
It goes to females too, not just men.
Yeah,
This isn't a sexist conversation. This is a suicide thing about men and female. The females, going back to the mother thing and being responsible and being a part of your child's life. This stems for mothers as well, not just dads. There are dads that need to buck up, put their big boy pants on because they did what they did. It takes two to tango. But there's also mothers out there that need to pull their head out of their asses and pay attention to the kids that they had. Or as my niece would say, crotch goblins. Tata, I know if you heard me, you're going to die laughing today. I said it. So it is a male and female thing.
it is, and although if you look at the statistics, the men die at a rate that is men die by suicide 3.63 times more than often than women, and maybe that's because I don't know why that would be.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
I guess we need to look up more on our statistics, but I definitely think we got our suicide point across.
Yes, I think so. Crotch cross.
Crotch goblins. Yes, Kevin. Crotch goblins.
There's a mental picture for you. It's like, wow. Just don't feed them after dark.
Exactly.
After midnight. Yeah, then they turn into gremlins. Yeah. So, Kayla May, do you have any last thoughts? Or was there anything that you would like to add to this discussion about suicide?
I know I've said it before, but just take the time to stop, look, and listen, and pay attention to the people that are close to you, near and far, because you could change somebody's life.
And as my final thought, I just want to add that there was a 19-year-old girl, beautiful young girl. She was an assistant manager at Starbucks. I knew her because I knew her family. We were in Cub Scouts together. I kind of grew up around her. She was a real good kid, and she took her own life. And the devastation that caused her mother and father, they'll never get over. They'll never get over that. So be kind to each other. Don't, if you look at the screen and go get that number, 800-273-8255. If you feel the need, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, call that number. They have local places wherever you live to be able to get you in touch with the crisis center so that you can get the help that you need, because quite frankly, you do need help. If you're feeling serious about suicide, you need help. And so call that number, 800-273-8255, and they can help you. And we can eliminate suicide in our lifetime if we work at it hard enough. I truly believe that.
I agree, Kevin.
Kayla May, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad we got this discussion out there. Most definitely.
I am too. And this will be on the YouTube channel and also on the podcast, and it'll be up forever. And if you need it, it's there for you.
Oh, we're going to be putting it up on reruns, I think. We made it in good timing.
I think so too. So, Kayla May, thank you very much. And you're going to have a great weekend now, aren't you?
Yes, I got to go to my niece's graduation party. Shout out to Michaela Martin. I'm so happy.
Is this high school?
It is. It's actually college. She graduated from another college and going to another college over in Eastern Washington. So
oh, wow.
It's a high school, college graduation all in one.
Wow. Well, congratulate her for me. That's really cool that she did that.
It's very awesome.
And I want to thank everybody for listening now or in the future. And you all have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch. We'll be back next week. Kayla and I are going to be back on Monday, and we're going to tell you what's coming up next week. We got another great week of shows coming up, so I hope you'll stay with us. And you have a wonderful day. Take care, Kayla.
See you later, guys.
Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other because each other's all we've got. See you next time on My Independence Report.